This is the CineSnob Podcast.
Everyone, welcome to episode 294 of the CineSnob Podcast. I'm Jerrod Kingery.
I am Cody Villafana.
Cody, this is the big one.
Yeah.
This is our 10th anniversary show. Put together a little something special
to
celebrate the occasion. That was touching. I know.
That blurry ass photo.
Some stock footage and a blurry ass photo. The photo from I think Kiko took that the day we recorded our first podcast with the what would be the selfie camera on probably like an iPhone 5,
something like that.
Yeah,
yeah,
because we're up to 15 now. So it's been 10 years, which shit. I think the first movie we reviewed was X-Men Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
I was wearing my old Tim Duncan jersey in that picture because that day was game let's see, what was it? It was game 3 of the Western Conference Finals between the Spurs and the Thunder.
Yeah.
Wow. And Spurs lost that game. Thunder won 106-97, making the series 2-1 San Antonio. And then the next game, which was 10 years ago today, the 27th, the Thunder tied 2-2. So I imagine we were pretty stressed out at that point. But then, of course, the Spurs went on to win the championship that year. So
yeah, man. So the Spurs were good back then. What else? We were recording in person, which was a thing that used to happen.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I'm the one that ruined that by moving. But
yeah, that's true. However, I mean, Kiko wasn't long for this podcast, so it would have crumbled at some point.
Yeah, I mean, well, to be fair, in the interim, he's had another child, and you know, got a little tough for him. It was tough to even the beginning of that podcast was difficult because we'd go Sunday mornings. I think at Kiko's request.
Yeah,
he was never awake. It was always the case of you and I standing on his doorstep, like knocking on his door.
Yes,
and he'd answer like in his underwear and. Yeah, I don't remember when he like officially dropped off, but
you know, it is crazy to also think that the sort of like humble beginnings of like we had to raise money to buy equipment to make this podcast, whereas now you can spend like less than $100 and sound professional,
right?
With like with just like basic ass editing software. It's crazy because 10 years ago was sort of. I mean, like, not everyone had a podcast back then. I mean, it was a pretty novel thing back then, I think.
Yeah, and like you said, the level, like the entry level, the barrier for entry was higher because, like, this mic, the Yeti, Blue Yeti, I think it was available maybe. I don't know when it came out, but this thing is like made everything easier. You've got much better mic than that now. But yeah, I mean, we had to buy mics, we had to buy a mixer and a recording device. The recording device has since quit working. I tried to use it recently for something and it just doesn't want to record anymore, which blows because
I don't think I knew that.
I think I told you about it, but it's anyway, not that we're clamoring to use it for anything, but
yeah.
Yeah, and now it's so much easier. And I mean, the pandemic made things so much easier to begin with anyway, for remote stuff. It kind of accelerated the timeline, I believe, because we weren't doing video before the pandemic.
That's right. Yeah, we were using a different software, and that's a software that I found that I felt like really gave us a leg up.
That was actually really good. I don't Cast was it?
Yeah,
was the platform. That was a really good platform. Yeah, I mean, the editing I'd have to do for the WAV files, and because I'd have to pump up the volume, and it was just a shit show. Like, I don't know how much you've messed with like actual like mixers in the real world. It's always a fucking pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So getting a platform like this, we're on StreamYard now. It's super easy to do. But
shit, like even like the Zoom recorders now have like multiple things where you can like plug in 4 mics and you could do it all on the recorder and stuff like that. And we were lugging around mics and a mixer and a recorder, just different times.
Yeah, because like the first year, because I left like almost exactly a year in. I moved up here. The first year we did like in-person stuff frequently.
Yeah.
Because we did Michael Rooker. We recorded a podcast with when Josh Starnes, our colleague from the Houston Film Critics Society, was in town for Alamo City Comic-Con. So we had a big like roundtable podcast with him. We did one for
we did Lou Ferrigno and Jason David Frank.
Yeah, we did Petting Zoo. That was in South by. We did that at Northwest, whatever it's called now, Northwest 10, Northwest 14.
Yeah,
in the lobby of that theater. Lots of adventures with that stuff before I moved out of town and we had to go remote. But I think we do it like through Skype or something too. When I initially moved up here,
we may have, because I know that we used to Skype Kiko in because of the one time. I'd love to go back and listen to that where he was like pumping gas and you could.
Oh yeah. Well, he would drive around for an hour and then like go home, but then he did that thing where his Wi-Fi wasn't connecting. Like when you're in your driveway and the Wi-Fi doesn't connect right. And
yeah, but then there was the time where we were, I think that was the night that we did the late record for the interview when it dropped on VOD, and I believe Kiko was like literally driving or on the road or something.
I think that was the first one we did remotely because I was at home. I was still in San Antonio for that, but it was like Christmas Day.
Yeah, and that might have been over Skype or something like that.
Times they are changing, but I mean, I was trying to go back and look at stuff like what had changed in 10 years, but I don't really have anything good.
It is also crazy that we've been going 10 years and we're not even at 300 episodes.
Yeah, we took some big chunks off. What's it? It should be 520 roughly if we did it weekly.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. 10 years is an awful long time for a podcast. So, I don't think it's inexcusable to have missed some across the years, but 10 years, 10 years and almost 300 episodes. So we'll get there in the next, through the summertime. We'll see what happens, but we should get there. It should be like a relatively straightforward path to 300, but
I think so. Yeah.
Anyway. So happy 10th anniversary. How much has changed since then? So
I mean, just kind of even us talking about just like the technical aspects of it is crazy, let alone just sort of like everything else that goes along with it.
Well, I mean, there's like 4 years of mush in there with COVID, so that all feels like a year. But, all right. Anything else about this anniversary before we move on, Cody?
No, it's just a staggering amount of years. It is crazy to think about, honestly.
Yeah. So
like the idea that like we started this the last time the Spurs won the championship, and that feels like it was like decades ago at this point.
Yeah. I mean, it is crazy. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to reviews.
Here are this week's reviews.
First up this week, we have Furiosa.
My childhood. My mother. I want them back.
I want them back.
Whatever you have to do. However long it takes. Promise you'll find your way home. Protect the green place.
It's time to take what's rightfully ours! Ready, steady, go!
is mine.
This is a prequel to 2015's Mad Max Fury Road, which, if I recall correctly, neither of us were too terribly enthralled with that movie.
That is correct.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, in a very small minority, because this movie has a pretty Fury Road has a pretty big cult status. I mean, was Oscar nominated for Best Picture that year, and I think won a few Oscars for editing and something else. But this is a prequel focusing on the Furiosa character, who in Fury Road is played by Charlize Theron. Not entirely sure why she's not still playing the character, but that's probably another discussion. Anyway, Cody, tell us about Furiosa and what you thought of it.
Yeah, so like you said, I mean, I think I don't know, I won't speak for you in terms of your problems with Fury Road, but for me, for me it was all kind of like spectacle. And
yeah, exactly. I mean, I get it. That's why people love it, but to me, it just sort of fell flat story wise.
Yeah, and I you know, a thin story. I was talking with Jerry and Eddie about it, and they both like the movie a lot. But they said it's basically like a 2-hour U-turn. Basically, is what happens in the movie. But yeah. So to be fair, I did not. I was gonna try to rewatch Fury Road before I saw this, and I just ran out of time, quite honestly. But this kind of is, you know, again, like you said, serves as a prequel, taking that Furiosa character and learning a little bit more about, you know, how she came to be and everything. So, you know, the one thing I will say is also, to preface this, is that the Mad Max lore or saga or whatever, I've only seen the first Mad Max and then Fury Road and now Furiosa. I haven't seen there's two others, right?
There's Mad Max 2, or The Road Warrior as it's called, and then Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. I've seen parts of the first one. I've never seen those other two. It was a little before my time.
Yeah, same. Yeah, and so you know, the thing that you do get with this movie that's different than Fury Road is that you do get like lore, right? You get backstory, maybe to a certain fault, you know, I think in some cases, because this movie sort of packs a lot of like dense character history into things, so much so that Anya Taylor-Joy doesn't even show up until like halfway into the movie, or at least like a third into the movie. Yeah. It's split up into, is it like 5 or 6 chapters?
I thought it was 8, but maybe I'm thinking of something else.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Well, no, it's split up into chapters in the movie, and basically, she's not in the first 2, I believe. I think she shows up in chapter 3. So you get a lot of, her childhood, and then kind of a trauma that happened to her, and then sort of how she fit into ultimately where she ended up being, and again, if you're interested in like the lore of it all, I think, you know, you might find some interest in what you're seeing here. But for me, it was a lot of like time and energy spent on this storyline and world that I just don't particularly care about. The spectacle side of things is still here. You know, there's without a doubt like great action sequences and chases and stuff like that. You know, if I'm recalling correctly, the huge thing about Fury Road that people loved was that it was all like practical effects, right? And like people were losing their shit over that. This movie feels very CG to me. I don't know if you got that sense, but
100%. There is some very obvious green screening, which I'm not opposed to, but it's not the practical stunt spectacular I believe that the first film was, or the last film was.
Yeah, especially when that was sort of, I think, what a lot of people hung their hat on for that movie. But there are, without a doubt, some great action sequences. I think one of the more interesting storylines, and I think maybe the best part about the movie, is that you do get to know a little bit more about a relationship between Furiosa and the war rig kind of commander. I don't remember the character's name, if they even say it in the movie.
They do. Hold on, let me look it up.
Here it is. Praetorian Jack.
Oh yes.
Played by Tom Burke. I actually think that relationship is the like one of the few that I cared about in the movie, and I think they do a good job establishing it. I think the sequence where they're sort of like they have to like fight off a bunch of people, I guess, trying to steal what's in their rig is the best sequence of the movie, I thought.
It's kind of the middle of the movie's big set piece that I think is really, really good.
Yeah, and it's where sort of like so Furiosa is basically like in hiding, kind of disguising herself as a male, and this is where she kind of like finally is revealed about what's going on, which weirdly, like, she's doing it as a big deal, but then it doesn't come up again, which I found a little weird. That like nobody like had a problem or calls attention to it. I guess she proved her worth, and maybe it didn't matter at that point. But
yeah, that was a bit confusing to me too.
Yeah, it's not really spoken about. It's similar to Fury Road. Furiosa, Anya Taylor-Joy doesn't have much dialogue. I think they said it's like less than 30 lines of dialogue. But there's plenty of dialogue elsewhere, and yeah, I mean, I should say too, Chris Hemsworth is playing the villain and like clearly having a great time, as kind of like a warlord kind of guy who ends up abducting her and then ultimately like finding their way back to as he kind of takes over a place called Gastown. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I was a little bored early on. I think once the movie hits its middle point, it kind of shifts into a better, more entertaining gear, where at least like the action sequences I found to be engaging. I don't know that any of the story does anything for me. Like I said, I don't know if the expanded lore like really registers or makes an impact. I liked watching Chris Hemsworth in the movie. I liked the relationship between Furiosa and Jack. I could kind of leave the rest of it, and again, the sort of like rich character lore, like the, Immortan Joe's like weird, like cast of characters that he's around. Like, again, like it's weird and it's, it's like a richly populated world. But again, I just didn't really care about much of what was going on there. So, I think that the movie is perfectly fine. I don't know that I would, I'm not like over the moon about it. And I think it succeeds on the strength of its, there's a few action sequences I think kind of carry it. But beyond that, it's whatever. I didn't really, connect with it.
Yeah. I'm kind of in the same boat. It does have more character building and a little more of a plot, I think, than Fury Road. But it's mired in this prequel stuff. And that's the thing that really kind of makes it less interesting for me. Like I said, I wasn't a big fan of Fury Road. I don't dislike it. I don't think it's a bad movie. I just wasn't, it didn't grab me. This definitely offers, I feel like, more story than Fury Road, but I think that it being a prequel and it being one of those prequels that feels the need to kind of fill in the blanks, as opposed to just sort of making this another adventure beforehand. That's the thing that makes me a little more, that disappoints me a little bit more about it. I mentioned in the beginning that I'm not sure why they recast Charlize Theron. I don't know what the behind the scenes stuff was. I know that her and Tom Hardy like didn't get along during filming. I don't know. I don't dislike Anya Taylor-Joy in this movie, but I don't feel like there's anything that she brings to this movie that Charlize Theron couldn't have brought. I mean, Charlize Theron could certainly play. She doesn't look like her age. She could play younger. And there is some confusing things in this movie, like I don't know. I mean, this isn't really a spoiler as much as it is like where it would end up with a prequel. Like the prequel, this movie ends, introducing us to the scene, to the premise where Furiosa will be introduced in Fury Road. And I don't feel like the timeline makes sense. And I think that the movie kind of highlighting that, because the movie ends there and then shows you clips from Fury Road over the end credits. I don't know that the movie really needed to do that. I feel like it got stuck in this prequel thing, and it doesn't really help the movie in any way. There is some things, like you said, that, the idea that she was hiding being a woman because she was going to be one of the Immortan Joe's wives. And then it just kind of gets dropped. Well, I don't understand why.
Yeah.
The movie doesn't bother to explain it, even when it's explaining all these other things. I feel like it maybe takes the weirdness up another level than Fury Road did. But I think to a lesser, like the results are lesser than Fury Road was. Like you mentioned the stunts. Like the only real big giant set piece is that middle war rig kind of hijacking scene. And there's some great stuff in there.
Yeah.
The rest of it does feel a little too dodgy CGI at times. And some green screen stuff that I don't feel like was present in Fury Road.
Yeah, I don't think so. Or at least that's not how I remember it.
Or at least it doesn't obviously come across that way. There's some stuff in here that just plain looks kind of bad.
I agree.
And I don't recall I don't recall any of that from Fury Road. I like the what's his name? The Jack, Praetorian Jack relationship quite a bit. I really like that actor. I like, one of the things that kind of grabs me about these movies all the time is just the pure Australianness of it. Like it's very whacked out at times. And I think it fits, but the Immortan Joe stuff, like that just feels like we're, visiting with Darth Vader in the Star Wars prequels. Like we're just fleshing out this thing that was already weird and mysterious to begin with. And you're just adding more to it. And I don't know that it works. I don't know. I like you, I don't have anything really bad to say about it.
Yeah.
I'm just not into it as much. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. On a major level, I think it suffers from the same thing all prequels do, in being too much about filling in the blanks. And it is not, to bring up the real world stuff. It's not doing well at the box office. And I know people are comparing it to, Fury Road didn't do well either, but that was 9 years ago. And this is one of those things that's made. This is like a fan movie. This is made for the fans that are out there. And that people aren't turning up to see it. Well, then here's another kind of big misfire in these legacy sequel things. We saw it last year with Transformers, with Indiana Jones, with Fast and Furious. Like it's maybe we don't need any more of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I can't say that Furiosa really argues too much for its own existence. I don't think it's bad or anything. Who cares at this point?
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Anyway, what's your grade for Furiosa?
Yeah, so I'm going to give it a B-. I mean, I think again, I think that it has a slow start. I think that the childhood stuff is not all that interesting in my opinion, and it gets kind of bogged down with some things. I think once that middle of the movie sequence happens, that's like everything firing on all cylinders, where I think the movie hits its peak and its best moments there. There's some good action sequences. The one that's kind of like the ambush thing that happens towards the third act of the movie, I think is pretty good too.
Oh yeah.
But then I think the movie kind of ends not so spectacularly. It's kind of I don't know that it quite sticks the landing on that. But that being said, especially with those long, because the action sequences are long, right? They're like long stretches, and I think that's super engaging, and I think kind of has it teeter into being into that recommendation B- level is because of the strength of those scenes. And then, like I said, that relationship that really works within the movie also floats it pretty well. And that's, a good, third of the movie or so.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to agree with you. A B-. I don't, I could still recommend it, but I'm not heartily recommending it. I think it's fine. I mean, your mileage is going to vary how much you're into this Mad Max stuff anyway. I think if you're a super fan, like you're already going to be on board, but it is just kind of more of the same that we got from Fury Road. And I think a little bit inferior action wise, especially like practical stunt wise. I think it's much more inferior, but
yeah.
All right, let's go and move on to our last movie, the Garfield movie.
Our best shot at jumping on the train is here.
Hold on a sec. I'm just taking in the wind speed, the direction of the sun, and various angles. Yes, I say we jump the train from right here.
Didn't I just say that?
I've seen it on television a million times. We'll need 100 feet of rope.
Rope. Yeah, okay.
All right. And then, timing it just right, we swing over as the train passes by and land on top of the car. Boom.
Or we can do this.
Oh, jump, boy. Uh-oh.
Part of me wants to help him.
No, this is how he learns.
This is the third Garfield feature film. The first two were in the early 2000s with Bill Murray. It was kind of a live action hybrid thing. This is the first fully animated one. You hear, of course, for whatever reason, the go-to guy for cartoon voices these days is Chris Pratt as Garfield. Anyway, Cody, tell us about the Garfield movie and what you thought of it.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm not going to be kind here. So my reference point for Garfield is like there was like a TV cartoon, right?
Garfield and Friends. I mean, this was, this is like in the 80s, there was some Garfield holiday specials that preceded it. And then from the late 80s to the early 90s, there was a Garfield and Friends cartoon show that was pretty well received and pretty kind of in spirit with the comic strip.
Now, if I remember the characterization of Garfield there, like he was like really monotone, right? And very dry. And that's my memory of sort of like Garfield there. And this movie, suffers from what a lot of these animated movies do, which is like just making a generic ass movie with IP and taking, this movie has like no character or personality to it. It barely feels like it's Garfield, where like, yes, he likes lasagna and hates Mondays, but like that's kind of the extent of the Garfield you're getting, and everything else is this sort of like tacked on heist animated movie that's just extremely generic. And I don't think that Chris Pratt is particularly good in this. I don't think that he's like, I don't think he's wisecracky enough. He's not, doing the monotone thing well either. You brought it up on Twitter. We had a Twitter exchange, and like Garfield's not lazy in this adaptation. Yeah. He's kind of doing all of these adventures. Who is doing the voice of the human character? What's his character's name?
Nicholas Hoult. It's John. Nicholas Hoult is doing John.
That is the most... I'm sorry. I really like Nicholas Hoult. This is the most generic voice performance I think I've maybe ever heard, is his performance as John. It has like... It almost sounds like it's AI, to be honest with you. It is a very, very generic portrayal. There's like no characterization to his voice. There's no... It's just really bad. You could have put like literally any actor in that role.
Well, I mean that's kind of the John character is supposed to be just the everyman,
right?
And I mean, I get it, but yeah,
it's like even when he's flustered or whatever, there's no personality to it. You get this tacked on like father son, like long lost father storyline here with Samuel L. Jackson playing Vic, Garfield's long lost dad. Again, this story sucks. It's not very interesting. The animation style, again, not super interesting. It just looks like again, your everyday sort of like 3D animated cartoon. And yeah, I mean, I just, again, it's just like a very by the numbers routine animated movie that has like the occasional sprinkle of Garfield, again, like eating a lot. He likes lasagna. He hates Mondays. Odie is there. Maybe Odie's the best part of the movie, I guess.
I mean, Odie is probably the one that's truest to character. I mean, typically the relationship between Garfield and Odie is a little more antagonistic at the hands of Garfield, but Odie is, but Harvey Guillen is playing Odie, which not that you could tell, but
right, it's just a bunch of dog noises.
Yeah.
But I'll leave this to you as the Garfield expert of the two of us. But yeah, for me, this is just like a suck egg, terrible animated movie, just like dime a dozen generic, and like a very clear and obvious IP grab mining type thing.
Yeah, I mean, Garfield was, the comic strip was released the year I was born, so I'm the same age as Garfield, so I was right in that target demographic. The 80s and into the early 90s, you couldn't really go anywhere without seeing this Garfield stuff. Like, I have some of them still, but one of the big things was like these weird motivational posters. Thanks for the thumbs up. That gave me a thumbs up. That was weird.
Yeah.
Still baffled by this goddamn thing. Anyway, so there was like for prizes in my elementary school class, you could get Garfield posters. I mean, Garfield was at the book fair. There's little books everywhere. I mean, it was heavily merchandised, and that's kind of the goal of the comic strip, was to be heavily merchandised. So when the Garfield cartoon came along and the Garfield and Friends, I mean, I feel like that really captured the spirit. The voice actor was a guy named Lorenzo Music, who had that real monotone voice, which I don't know if you know, the Bill Murray connection there is that the first season of the real Ghostbusters cartoon, Lorenzo Music did the voice for the Peter Venkman character.
Okay.
So that was kind of like why fans wanted Bill Murray to do the voice for the Garfield movies that came after that, because Lorenzo Music passed away, and there was that deep connection there. Not that Dave Coulier did the voice for Bill Murray's character later, so I don't know if they ever called Dave Coulier, but anyway, I never did see those live action Garfield movies. And I know there's like Garfield TV shows that have come after this, with Frank Welker, who I really love as a voice actor, doing the voice of Garfield, but they're all trying to capture that same sort of monotone voice. This Chris Pratt is just playing Chris Pratt. I don't have a problem with Chris Pratt. I think he's great in the Lego movies. But he is weirdly this go-to, and I think I may have mentioned this to you. I didn't have a huge problem with the movie other than it being totally generic, and I thought it was funny enough. It's not really Garfield though. Like, there is a bunch of shit tacked onto it. Like the character of Vic, like that's nowhere in any Garfield stuff from before. The characters, Bowen Yang and what's his name, Brett Goldstein playing like the henchman, and Hannah Waddingham playing this like femme fatale character. All those are invented for the movie, and then the bull that Ving Rhames plays, all that stuff feels like it's from another movie, and they just shoved Garfield in there. because none of this is a Garfield story. Like the lasagna is there, yeah. That he hates Mondays is there, but like all these adventures like took place within Garfield's house, you know, or close to it. Like this is just a standard adventure movie that feels like they threw Garfield into it for no particular reason. And you know, it's not like they're trying to bring Garfield back. Like he's still around. Like there's still media out there. Like there's still books, and Nickelodeon bought Garfield after this movie was greenlit. So like there's still products that like it's still a marketable thing. I don't know why they felt the need to invent this story. It's not like the Super Mario Brothers movie, which I felt also suffered from the same fate of this generic ass story. I don't know why they felt the need to put him in this generic ass story and not just make a fucking Garfield movie that is truer to the character and truer to what you've, you know, what is still around existing. I don't know. It's a real puzzle to me. Like, I don't know why it's so generic.
Yeah.
Because it's not like they needed to invent a plot line.
Yeah, but this is the same shit that like we talked about with Super Mario Brothers, you know, and a couple of other things where it's like, you know, again, I don't like, why not? Like you have the IP. Why are you just making like generic movies and then having them fit the mold of these characters? Like it's a sandbox you get to play in and not just like a vehicle to, you know, have people recognize a character on screen. You know,
well, like Super Mario Brothers was a little different in that there's not a real good through line for the game. Like there's the basic idea, like this plumber has to rescue the princess, right?
Right.
But then even that mucked it up by, you know, and I don't think incorrectly, by making the princess a stronger character.
Right.
But then you screwed up the whole thing. Like you didn't account for that. Like you just kept the whole. It's kind of like that Little Mermaid remake where you kept all the beats there, but then you change character moments and then it makes no sense.
Yeah.
That happened with Super Mario. This one, like you just tacked some shit onto Garfield and then like, it's like Garfield's a guest star in this other movie.
Yeah. Well, and I'm just disappointed that they didn't include my favorite Garfield comic strip of John.
The cum drinking. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
No, I know what you mean. I've been around the internet long enough. Someone bought that original strip at some point. Because a few years ago, before Nickelodeon bought Garfield, you could buy the archives. Like there was a website, and I bought a couple animation cells from the Halloween special and the Christmas special, and you could get them autographed by Jim Davis, like personalized.
Oh wow!
So I got dumb things from Jim Davis, like jokes. And somebody bought that exact strip, the dog cum strip, and had Jim Davis write like "This is canon" or something on it. I can't remember the exact words, but it's funny. But yeah, there's so much like I said, you're not bringing Garfield back. You're not taking this thing that's plotless. Like, granted, it has a very minimal plot. Like, he's lazy and hates Mondays and loves lasagna, and torments Odie and John. But like, you put them in this heist movie with a father character. Like, what does the father character have to do with anything?
Yeah,
it's just to make these sad moments with baby Garfield. And I didn't hate it. I had some genuine laughs. I do think the animation style is mostly generic. I do think it does pop into some interesting stuff every now and then. Like there is like when they're illustrating the heist sequence, there's some different animation there, but otherwise this is totally generic and disappointing. But anyway, Cody, what's your grade for the Garfield movie?
I'm giving it a C-. For me, just had a bad time.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a C+. I think it's fine enough. I mean, it's disappointing that they had all this to play with and this is what they came up with. I don't know. How do you solve the Chris Pratt problem? Like, who do you get to be a monotone voice? Like
I don't know. I mean, I think there's options, but
granted that you're going to have to have that you're going to have to have a celebrity do it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, that's going to do it for this week. Next week, Cody, what's happening next week?
So we've got some options. We haven't talked about it too much, but there's that horror movie In a Violent Nature that has a little bit of buzz behind it, just in terms of like audience reactions. And then, on Disney Plus, there's the Ron Howard directed Jim Henson documentary that comes out next week. So maybe we can cover that. I'm sure you're interested to see that.
I'm very interested in that. As much as I'm not a Ron Howard director fan, but
yeah.
No,
has he made many documentaries?
That's a good question. I don't know of any that he's made, but I'm sure there is some because he's like he works fairly. He's always working. Yeah, looks like he did. Go ahead.
He did We Feed People, which was I think a Jose Andres thing. He did a Pavarotti documentary.
Oh gosh.
I guess he has made several. The Beatles, 8 Days a Week, the touring years.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I guess he's done several.
It looks like there's quite a few. We Feed People, Rebuilding Paradise, which was the fire in Paradise, California. Made in America, the Jay-Z movie.
Yeah, it seems like this is a second half of the career thing for him.
Yeah. Anyway, cool. If you want to reach us, you can email us at podcast@cinesnob.net. Find us on Twitter @cinesnob, Facebook CineSnobNet, YouTube.com/cinesnob. 10 years.
10 years.
10 years. How old were you? 10 years ago.
24.
Okay. Yeah, I was 35. God damn.
Yeah.
If I could only go back there, Cody.
We always want what we can't have.
Yep. All right. On that note, I'm Jerrod Kingery.
I'm Cody Villafana.
Thank you for listening to the CineSnob Podcast. To read reviews, interviews, and more, visit CineSnob.net. See you next week.